What's going on, everyone? Alex Miller from the Eagle here, joined by Travis Brown. We're inside Cal Field. A&M football team just hosted their weekly press conference. Heard from Jimbo Fisher, players Ainias Smith and Damani Richardson. Aggies coming off a frustrating 20-10 loss. Travis, what's kind of the mood and the feeling among players and Jimbo today?
You know, well, it was different between the players and Jimbo, but if you look at kind of the fan base and the way that how frustrated and upset the fan base was on social media and just talking to people around with that Arkansas loss, Jimbo, when he went back, he was frustrated after the game, but talking to him after he saw the film, it didn't seem like he was as frustrated as maybe you would expect him to be, or the frustration levels didn't necessarily match that of the fan base. I think that he said it was just little things here and there. You know, you could talk about some missed blocks by wide receivers on some plays that were the keys to plays that had produced big yards in games before, and that it just seemed like on every play it was one player or one position group here or there that caused the problems. You have to go back and watch the film yourself to see if you think. I think that there is some truth to that. I think that between penalties and a couple times getting some like screen plays blown up, they were behind the chains. But when it comes down to it, as ugly as a game as it was, you were sitting there late in the third quarter and A&M was only down by 7 points, and so they could have won that game. That for as poorly as they played, they were still in that ball game up until the fourth quarter, and that's kind of what Jimbo Fisher was putting out there. It is interesting to see. There is a lot of talk about practice. We're talking about practice and the where the kind of standard is and how the player. A lot of the players seem a little bit frustrated with how the team as a whole is practicing. Jimbo has said it's a little bit up and down, but if you talk to Isaiah Spiller, you talk to what Ainias Smith said today, it seems like they are a little bit concerned about how practice is running, and maybe the attention to detail in practice is something actually Jimbo Fisher said. From the housekeeping standpoint, Layden Robinson, he said should be practicing today. That's what he said last week. Layden Robinson didn't play, of course, in the Arkansas game. Caleb Chapman and Chase Lane are day-to-day. Both of those guys missed Arkansas as well. So, yeah, it wasn't quite as frustrated all around as I thought it might be amongst those guys.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, particularly with Jimbo, you know, and it was interesting at the end of his kind of opening statement, which is sometimes a monologue, which it kind of was today. Jimbo said, you know, there were a lot of good things that happened in the game, and that kind of surprised me that he would say something like that, given the Aggies only scored 10 points. But the thing that kind of caught my attention, too, was a lot of talk about Isaiah Spiller only having one carry after the 67-yard touchdown run, and give credit where it's due. Jimbo went through the play-by-play book showing, hey, this is why Isaiah Spiller only had one play. And when you go back and you look at it, it kind of adds up and makes sense.
He said there was a few, after that big touchdown run, there was about two or three. They gave it to Devon Achane. There was two quarterback runs in there, and there was about two or three RPOs that Zach Calzada decided to pull. One of them was the Ainias Smith 30-yard play down the line. Another one was they completed for, I believe it was 8 yards. So those RPOs were working, and a lot of times with those read-based plays, it's just kind of what the defense gives you, and they weren't necessarily, he felt like giving the run in that situation, is what Jimbo said. It is a little curious, but I also go back to the fact that, I mean, the offensive line just hasn't for the past 3 games at times just given really much to work with. That hole that Isaiah Spiller had on that one touchdown run was about the best blocking he'd gotten all game. And so, yeah, you know, for the most part, the pass blocking has been pretty good. Now, you can argue that against a 3-man rush, at times it was a little shaky, and there was a lot happening right there. But yeah, if you're going to run those RPOs and what they're going to give you in those is the pass, and they were completing them, it makes sense. I'm not sure if it's what I would have done, but also I get paid what I do to do here and not what Jimbo does. So
there you go. I am curious and you know, we'll discuss this more later, how the offensive line kind of gets back to maybe some of its original form with Layden Robinson potentially being back this week. the Aggies, they need to turn the page fast if they want to make something out of this season. So we'll turn the page ourselves. What are you kind of seeing initially from Mississippi State, just kind of early on this week, and what we know about them?
Yeah, I think that it could be a good game for some of these players like Zach Calzada, the offensive line, to get a little bit of their feet back under them. Should maybe be a little bit less physical, of course, with compared to Arkansas, what they're doing. And they should be a good game for Isaiah Spiller to kind of reestablish them, to reestablish that run, because so much about Jimbo Fisher's offense is predicated on establishing the run to open up the passing game a little bit and open up the play action game a little bit, and they just haven't been able to necessarily establish the run that well, or as well as they usually are like to. On defense, it's going to be interesting because I think it could resemble the Kent State game a little bit. I think we'll see a little more of that dime package like they did against Kent State, which is a very up-tempo, throw the ball around kind of offense, similar to what Mike Leach likes to run. And so it might be one of those games that on the surface looks frustrating to fans, because I bet you they will, very different from what Arkansas did against A&M this weekend, give them a lot of the underneath and intermediate and check down routes. And so they might get some yards, but when it gets to the red zone, suffocate them. It's exactly what LSU did against them this past week, and it worked pretty well for them. So I would think A&M would try to do the same thing, a little bit of that bend but don't break kind of defense.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Field crew out here getting the grounds ready for this weekend's game. Be sure to check into theeagle.com for all of our coverage this week leading up to A&M's game against Mississippi State. For Travis Brown, I'm Alex Miller. We'll see you next week.